This is the UK Brewery Project, and this is Pollys Brew Co. Pollys Brew Company is based at Malden, Wales, and was founded by Sean Weldon in 2018. But the story of Pollys starts slightly earlier, in 2014. Sean had started a real ale brewery in Mold, which is based in northeast Wales, and it was called Black Brook Beer Company. He began formulating recipes in 2014, and then he founded his brewery in 2015. The brewery was actually based at the family's farm in the converted stable where the family's horse used to reside, and where his twin brother James also worked as a graphic designer. He was brewing on a 6-barrel setup, and his first brews were in summer 2016, with, I believe, the beers being a pale ale and a milk stout, which were aptly named Black Brook Pale Ale and Black Brook Stout. These first two brews were fined, aka clear. Over the next 6 months, Sean moved away from producing clear beers in cask to producing unfined and naturally hazy beers, such as his Mount Hood, which was a single American hopped session IPA. Unfortunately, even with beers being marked as unfined, it seemed they weren't appreciated by the cask beer market, who perhaps were expecting clear beers or were used to having clear beers. And he began to fall out of love with actually producing cask beers, as he wasn't able to make what he wanted to make. Based on this, he decided to dissolve Black Brook and start a new brewery with a new identity. The name selected was based on where he was brewing in the converted stable. So the family horse that used to reside there was called Polly, and his brother James, the design projects he was working on was called Loca Island, and so Loca Polly was born. James managed to convince his parents to subsidise the cost of buying and importing some still tanks from China, which ended up having a port fees applied to them due to being shipped in boxes 10 centimetres larger than expected. In January 2018, Loca Polly brewed their first beer, which I believe was either a Chinook Pale Ale or another Pale Ale. I'm not sure at this stage. As Pollys is a brewery that is creating new brews all the time, I'm not really able to have whatever was part of their original range. They don't have a core range, but I don't have anything from their what they called original range. But what I shall do is I will have one of their pale ales that I've got here, which is in line with what one of their first beers would have been at that stage. So I'm going to grab this glass, and I'm going to grab the Yearn and Full double dry hopped pale ale, which is from their recent double dry hopped series which they've done. Let's pour this in. You can smell that nose already. Look at that. Let's say unfined, hazy. This is not a nucleated glass, so that's all natural carbonation there. So in here it does say the hops are Citra, Dorado and Dorado, and the yeast is London Ale Free, which is quite handy. Quite nice that they put that on there. They've got the H and Y on the back to say what is what. Let's hold that up. That is a glass of orange juice. Look, isn't it? Mango orange juice with pulp and everything. It feels like that. The nose, oh wow, that is fruity. Oh, that is beautiful. The Citra is definitely, I'm picking up the Citra nose. I'm not too sure. Yeah, Dorado, I've had that. I've not had the Sobrero one, but Dorado as well. It smells good. You can smell the hops on it. Let's tuck in and try it. That's really smooth. Not too much. It sounds like there's a lot of carbonation, but there's not actually too much carbonation in it. Very smooth. And I was expecting quite a lot of bitterness afterwards. But it's very rounded. There's barely any bitterness actually. It must be very low in the IBUs, that one. I tend to find some of theirs have a bit of bitterness on the afterness, but that's really good. That is 5.5% and deceptively very easy to drink. So as I just alluded to before, their sort of first series of beers was called the Original Range, where Sean was paying homage to Cloudwater and Colonel, and he was producing sort of no gimmick beers, so nothing added, just water, hops, barley and yeast at that stage. Sean was on his own, and he would actually have to go out and make sales himself. It was during sort of the sales pitches at a wine and tap house bar in Mould, he met Aaron Fellows. Now, it just so happens Aaron had handed in his notice and was sort of going to give up working in the bar trade and beer industry in general, when Sean reached out to him with a job offer. So it ended up that Aaron was working on the sales side of the business while Sean was working on the brewing, and this was the case until about August 2018, so the first sort of 7 months of Pollys being in existence. Sean was producing 2 beers a week, but they began to realise that they required more help, and this is where in stepped Scott Nixon, who had been a friend for 10 years. He had no prior brewing experience, but he was a quick learner and he soaked up the knowledge. And that's why they brought him in. Pollys were aiming their beers at the big cities of London, Manchester and Birmingham, along with selling to sort of wholesalers rather than direct to individual bars. And it paid off for them. They were producing 3 batches a week, so batch producing, packaging and then selling them on. And it was working to their advantage. In 2019, their second year, they moved away from their original range and into what they called their augment range. The beers began to sell out to Europe, but this is where a bit of trouble began to hit. They received a cease and desist letter from Spendrups, which are a Swedish multinational who make a range of soft drinks under their Loka brand. The boys have sort of acknowledged their mistake of not being aware of the overlap of the soft drinks and alcohol brands with the word loco in it and the potential impact. Partly because they weren't expecting to be selling into Europe only 9 months after sort of creating their brewery. But they also, I think, sort of didn't realise that soft drink and alcohol may be considered the same category at that stage when it comes to brands. It was sort of a trying time for them, as their whole brand had been built up around this Loco Poly, and there were concerns about court costs and the having to rebrand. But sort of all credit to Spendrups, they listened to Poly's side of the argument, and they said they would allow them to continue exporting into Europe until the 31st of March 2019. And after that, they wouldn't be able to use the Loco Poly brand, otherwise there'll be court action, but they could continue using that brand in the UK. So the boys, carried on trading up until, I believe they said the 29th of March, right towards the deadline date. And then it was a case of brewing and selling what they had stock-wise in the UK. On the 1st of May 2019, they revealed their rebrand. They decided to keep the Poly element of name, so it wasn't a complete clean break. They did receive many people with ideas for names that would have been completely different, but keeping it as Poly makes more sense. I said they managed to sell down the remainder of their stock with the old branding in the UK at this stage, so there wasn't sort of a stoppage or any loss of income for them at this stage. It also seems the rebrand didn't impact their business, and Pollys continue to expand. The team increased to 6 people with new head brewer Lally, assisted by Guy and Matt, and they were now brewing 5 times a week to keep up with the growing demand for their beers. Now, we talk about the growing demand for their beers. I'm going to open up one of their other beers, and I'm just looking to see where it is because I've already predetermined which one I'm going for. I'm going to open up the Pollys Deep Fake. Now, this is a triple IPA, and it is going into carbonate glass, so I'm not going to pour too much because I don't want to create too much head on this. And also, it is a triple, so it's fine going with that size. So you can see sort of the beer standards we're looking at here. They're very, very similar. I think this one's actually slightly darker. I don't know if it's been picked up on the camera. It has suddenly gone out dark outside with a bit of rain clouds coming in. Just put that there a second. I was just going to have a quick look at this. So this one, yeah, I picked this one for a reason. So this is their triple IPA. And as said, I think I can handle a triple IPA. It's the first one on this series. Now, the reason why I've picked this one is it's entirely Simcoe hopped, and I'm not the biggest fan of Simcoe. What's even more crazy is it's 28 grams of Simcoe per litre. That is quite a huge amount of Simcoe, so it is very, very hopped. I'm just sort of hoping that maybe with that amount of hop in there, or maybe the high ABV, I might like it. Okay, very grassy. Bit of pine and grass. I noticed the same yeast strain, so London Ale 3, which seems to be, yep, one they use quite a bit. All right, let's try it and see. It's yeah. Oh, it's drinkable. It's just these sort of dustiness over the tongue, it feels like. You know, that's my only concern with, I think it's Simcoe at that stage to me. It's nice. It's not like this one, which is very, very fruity and hoppy. It is a different beer, but then it's triple IPA as well. Oh, that's better. That hit the tongue much better. So, 2020, COVID did hit the business like all other breweries, and they were selling to, you know, craft beers and craft beer pubs and craft beer shops, and it did hit them. But with the restart and, well, restarting of the economy and brewing, they had a chance to rethink their business, and they opted to reduce their brewing down to 4 days a week and focusing on enjoying the brewing and not just churning out as much beer as they can, which they sort of felt that they were going down that route, creating all the different varieties and all the rest. As sort of stated earlier, Pollys doesn't have a core range, and instead has one of the ever-evolving ranges. According to Untapped and Rate Beer, they have released over 300 beers in their 3 and a bit years, or 3.5 years, I should say, not bit. The highest rated beers that I've seen on their Untapped have been from their recent double dry hopped series, but they have been the double dry hop triple IPAs, with beers such as, I believe, Spur and Pines. I said the Deep Fake that I've got here was a sort of break from their double dry hop series, as this is a single hop, but it does actually squeeze into their top 10. I think it's about number 9. But for me, it's nice, but it's not something I would go back to. I think mainly only because of that sort of Simcoe hop. So I've looked at their beer styles, and obviously they are mainly producing pale ales, with about 100 of their beers being pale ales, and 184 of their beers being in like the IPA category. So if you look at pale ale as IPA and pale ale together, 290 beers roughly are pale, and the rest have been, well, they've dabbled in stouts, bitters, sours and lagers. They've dabbled in lagers as well, but they are mainly a pale ale brewery. Have a sip of this. So this has been a brief look at the history of Pollys Brew, and this has been the UK Brewery Project. For the past 26 weeks, I've covered one brewery a week from across the UK for each letter of the alphabet. It started like most visits to a pub, with a Q for Quantock, and ended like most pub visits with a P for Pollys. I've managed to have a brewery from each of the regions, though I do know some regions are underrepresented, such as Northern Ireland and Wales, along with some areas in England and Scotland that I perhaps didn't touch upon. But it has been, difficult circumstances, and it's all about whether the brewery is selling online and I'm able to order and get their beers, and a lot of them are doing reduced levels of their beers, and I want to do a full variety, or much variety as I can, and not just do 2 or 3 of them. For me, I should be taking a well-earned break for the moment, and I hope to return with what I shall label as maybe Series 2 of the UK Brewery Project. It might take a different form or shape, but my original aim, or should I say challenge, to have a beer from every brewer in the UK still stands. Until next time, keep supporting your breweries, bottle shops and pubs, but most importantly, enjoy the beer. Take care, everyone.